Hello, welcome back to Unplugged Gamification. We're going to look at another kind of unplugged game that you can start using in your classroom that's very effective for teaching and learning. The first one we showed you was a territory capture map, which is useful for recalling information from prior lectures and making that more interesting than either writing a quiz or talking about the key facts as you begin to lecture for the next session. This is a different kind of gaming. This is called simulation challenge versus gaming, and again, it's done with a simple deck of cards which you can produce yourself. So what I've done here is I've produced some cards which have different teaching methods on them, and I'm going to talk about how we would use those. So for example, this card is called collaboration. This card is here is called build, and this card would be a dopamine drip card. So let's look at how you use these tasks in any kind of teaching in your classroom. These tasks can be anything you want your students to be able to do at the end of their course. It could be mixing chemicals, it could be producing baked goods, it could be responding to an emergency. Whatever task it is that you can function, having the student practice as part of the game, that's what's key. In this case, since I'm teaching you about gamification, I'm going to be using some cards that have game themes on them. So let's see how you'd play a simple game like this. I'm going to take a deck of cards. This is a simple deck. I'm going to draw a card from the back, either working on my own or in a group. In a group is best with these because you get to collaborate with other learners. It stimulates people socially and it helps people learn from each other. So I'm going to draw the card, and the card says collaboration. So what I'm going to have to do then in the next 3 minutes, and timers are important, we'll explain why. We've got 3 minutes remaining in our challenge. And I'm going to start the timer now. I need you to come up with a technique in your classroom that will have students collaborate to make the learning more effective. So it has to be some kind of collaborative exercise. So in any of these kind of techniques, we're again finding a target behavior or simulated behavior that we want the learner to practice. Here's another card I've drawn. Now the way you could work with this, you could have a deck like this that you shuffle with all these projects, all these different outcomes or simulations, and you can shuffle them, and then you can simply put the deck on the desk, and you could have the students pick the card, or you could have them turn over the cards and then pick one of them from the deck that they'd like to cover. So there's a couple variations on basically the card driving some learning process, but some kind of selection process for the card. So we're going to pick another card here, and this card says combat. So now I've got 3 minutes in which I have to find some way in my classroom to introduce some sort of competition between students. So again, the timer makes everyone use their hunches and work efficiently, and there's some excitement because you have to race to beat the clock to go with what could I do in my classroom to make some competition. So you could, for example, if this was a course in emergency care, have a case study in which you have to have people solve the case to see who can solve it the quickest. So you would say, okay, we're going to start a timer now. Now everybody, here's the patient. Here's what's wrong with them. You have to find a way to save them. And the first person to find the correct answer to save them wins the game. So again, it's making something more interesting. So we drew the combat card, and now we've got to do something involved with combat and competition. These are great little ways to pick up. Now, how do they turn into games? What's very important in simulation games is we're going to add one concept here called debriefing. And I think a lot of you are familiar with the idea of debriefing. We have the simulation. So for example, I've made people, you in my classroom, as learning about games, all come up with some way to introduce competition in 3 minutes. So after you've all done that, what we're going to do is take time to say, okay, Group A, what was your idea? Group B, what was your idea? Group C, what was your idea? And so that we get an idea, this is called a debriefing, a chance for students to share what their hunch and what their best strategy would be to add competition in their classroom and to see what other students did. And then that would be the game itself. In order to make it game-like and in order to add competition, the thing you need to understand is we've already made it game-like. You don't have to have winners or losers. The game was responding very quickly to simulations, but it could be, in order to add a game, a couple of elements. Think about them. You could put them on a timer in 15 minutes. So you've got to work through all these cards in your hand in 15 minutes. And when you do, every time you do a card, you get $1,000. So you can tie that up to a reward. So every time they answer one of your challenges and they do it, they get $1,000. So it could see how many $1,000 you could earn with a maximum of how many cards in your hand per minute. I've got 4 cards in my hand, so in 15 minutes I could earn about $4,000. Now there's some vetting process in which the instructor has to look at it and say, you know what, it wasn't such a good idea. You just made up a bunch of random words, so you're cheating at the game. You can disqualify those people. So if you make up a bad answer, you're immediately disqualified. And then you could have the students vote on which the best solution was. So if we had a whole bunch of you faculty coming up with good ways to add competition to your classes for learning, we could say, okay, of the 3-minute challenge to come up with a good way to add competition, okay, everybody vote. Who liked Group A's idea? Who liked Group B's idea, etc. You can do these kind of elements. So this is a second great way we've taught you that brings in simulation and task-focused gamification to your unplugged arsenal.